Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the 16th of October assured the girls of the country that the government will decide the right age for marriage as soon as a concerned committee gives its report. In June this year, the centre had formed a 10-member task force under Jaya Jaitley to recommend whether the legal age of marriage for women could be changed from 18 years. The proposal to raise the legal age of marriage of women carries enormous economic and social gains for India, according to a State Bank of India report. The report, titled Increasing the Legal Age of Women's Marriage, a Dominant Strategy for Societal Good, Financial Empowering Women, counts benefits such as lowering maternal deaths and improving nutrition levels in the near term to putting more girls in college and enabling women to achieve greater financial independence in the long term. In this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the issue of raising marriageable age for women. Joining me on the program today are Shankar Agarwal, former Secretary, Ministry of Women and Child Development; Ruby Bharadwaj, Associate Professor, Department of Sociology, Janki Devi Memorial College, Delhi University; and Charan Singh, Economist and CEO, eGrow Foundation. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Mr. Agarwal, let me start the program with you first. Let's analyze the issue of raising the marriageable age of women and hear your thoughts on the subject.
Absolutely. First, let's look into the background and let's look into the past. In not times too far in the past, girls were getting married at the age of 11 years, 13 years, 15 years kind of thing. And what were the problems with that? Number one, at that age, the girls were not in a position to take a decision for themselves. So that decision was being taken by the parents or by somebody else. Secondly, that did not allow them to pursue their education. And unless they have got good quality and sufficient education, they will not be able to take decision on their own, and then they will not be able to take up a career. And third, when you get married at an early age, there are a whole lot of implication on the health. As you said, child mortality, health of the women, health during the pregnancy. Then it becomes very difficult to control the population as well. And under all these circumstances, it was found that if we want to take this country forward, we got to empower women. And one way to empower women is to give them good education so that they become financially independent, and they should be in a position to take major decisions of their life on their own. And that will happen only if we ask them, persuade them, cajole them to get married at a later age. But that does not happen in a society like ours. So it has to be backed by the force of law. And that's why the government today is thinking of raising the legal marriageable age for the girls from the present day of 18 years to 19 years or 20 years kind of thing.
Right. So, Professor Charan Singh, what are the economic benefits of raising the marriageable age of women?
So, first of all, if you have to look at the country's economic growth, there are two things. One is labor and one is capital. Now, capital is the banking industry, the stock market. The labor is where the women fits in. If we have to grow at the level that we are anticipating and become a $5 trillion or a $20 trillion economy, we need to use every bit of labor that is available in our country. And women are part of that labor. Now, the female labor force participation, if you look in our country, is hovering between 25 and 28%. In our neighborhood, if you see Nepal, Bangladesh, anywhere around 80%. The global average is around 60%. It is obvious that we cannot afford, if we have to gallop to 10-12% growth, if we have to become a world power, we cannot at all afford that our women should not join the labor force. If the women has to join the labor force, she has to be adequately skilled and she has to be properly educated. The other thing, please remember, women is just not part of the labor force. She is also a mother. That means she is generating another labor force. Now, if in her age, when she is young and not fully prepared for the motherhood duties, if you have her take the responsibility of motherhood, this will lead to stunting of the children. And herself in India, our women are so highly malnourished and undernutrition is so low. And when they produce children, the children are going to suffer from stunting and wastage long time. Again, impacts the labor force and the cognitive forces that go with that child which is not properly nourished or comes from a mother which is not properly nourished. Angus Deaton, the Nobel laureate, in his book wrote very well. He had said that in India, because the population is so highly undernourished, the height is not what it should be. And he was giving the example of the Dutch, and he said how tall they are because they're fully nourished. So therefore, I think it's very important, and there are other factors, if I have time, I'd like to go in them, but it's very important. This important ingredient of economic growth is labor force, and women's labor force participation has to be not only increased, she has to be adequately skilled so that she is very productive and we use her optimally, her capabilities optimally. That needs time. She needs proper education, she needs proper skilling, and she has to have the adequate level of maturity, both physical and emotional, before she starts taking responsibility of motherhood. There have been studies which have been conducted which show when the motherhood starts at a young age, it impacts the mother and it impacts the child, also impacts the family. So therefore, I think this is the right time to think through this and then go ahead and fixing an adequate, appropriate, and optimal age for marriage. We all understand the fertility period. Now, Mr. Secretary just mentioned about the maternal mortality rate. Can you imagine what it is in India? Unbelievable. It is 145 deaths for 1 lakh birth. And the world's best standards are 2. Where is 2? Where is 145?
Right.
And 2 is observed in countries like New Zealand, Australia, Poland. I think that's where we need to be. And to reduce that, we have to ensure when the female enters motherhood, she is absolutely ready for the job.
Absolutely. All right. So, Ruby Bharadwaj, let me bring you to the picture now. So, what is the optimum age really as far as marriage is concerned for a woman? And also from a societal point of view, why does it make sense to raise the marriageable age?
Well, we have to look at this issue holistically. We have to look at it in terms of the fact, yes, I agree that it allows girls to get better education, it allows them to get employment facilities. But at the same time, my rationale for increasing the age is a bit different. Number one, I feel that there should be gender parity. Both girls and boys enter school at the same age, they leave school at same age. So why should schoolgirls who have just about 18 or 17 who just left school be saddled with motherhood soon after their schooling? Why can't they get an opportunity to explore what they want to do, either in terms of higher education or finding some skill-based courses? But at the same time, I would not agree with the fact that increasing the age at marriage, legal age at marriage, is going to impact the nutrition of the girls. Also, I do not agree with the fact that, we already have 18 years as an age of marriage, but we have 27% of the population of our people who are still marrying before the age of 18. We still have people, we have a law in place to send girls and children to school. It's a fundamental right, but have we been able to implement it? So we have to look at the issue in a more holistic manner. Yes, I would say increase the age at marriage, but at the same time, it comes with a lot of riders from my side. The riders would be ensure that you implement right to education, ensure that you give better education, and ensure that you can actually give better nutritional levels, because MMR and IMR are not going to reduce simply by increasing the age at marriage. I mean, is there an evidence for that? That's
Right.
my rationale.
Okay, points taken. I think those are some important, valid points that you raised about gender parity and how, we have to address this issue holistically and look at some of the other problems as well and then truly take it forward. Talking about forward, let's take the discussion forward now. So, Mr. Agarwal, as far as the mindset of families is concerned, let's talk about that now. Who look at women as a burden, societal issues, familial issues, what do we do about that and how do we address that issue?
Let us look into the reasons why a family consider a girl to be a burden. First and foremost is the safety and security of the girl or the lady. Unfortunately, and you have seen in the recent past, a gruesome murder and gruesome act was done with a woman. And the kind of the responses were little lukewarm in the beginning. So ultimately, a lot of people, and especially those who belong to the lower section of the society, financially poor, they find it little difficult to take care of their girls and their daughters. So that is first. Second, that they feel that because of the pressure from the society, they would like to get the girl or the daughter married at an early age so that there will not be any pressure from the society. And that means basically lack of education. We had to ensure and we had to value every girl to be an asset rather than being a burden, basically, or a liability. So that is second part. And finally, as the ma'am has said and as my colleague has said, that once you make them productive, and productive means basically either the financially independent, financially earning, they will become not only a liability, they'll become a beautiful asset for the family. So idea is basically to educate them properly, give them skill properly so that they get a decent employment. And thereafter, we have to create an ecosystem also so that when a girl gets married and she goes to another place, she should be able to either get a transfer in the job or she should be able to get another equivalent kind of a job in the new place. Once we create this kind of an ecosystem, I'm sure that this by raising the marriage age alone will not help, but certainly it will help in a big way in achieving these objectives of making them self-independent, making them empowered, and taking care of their health and the health of their children.
All right. So, Professor Charan Singh, in your opening remark, you spoke about how women, it's important that they join the workforce. It's important that they get the kind of education that they need and the kind of skill sets. So, from India's point of view, how important is it for women to join the workforce? How does it help the family? How does it help the ecosystem? And how does it help the economy?
Yes, Frank, if you permit me, I want to link your question with the inputs that we received from the professor. I just want to mention that earlier when the marriageable ages were 11 years, 12 years, even 15 years, this was mainly a joint family. Now the families have become nuclear. In a joint family, the responsibility of a new child entering a new household of the man is little different and highly diluted. But in a nuclear family, the woman holds, if she is not working, the responsibility that she shoulders on her on the household work is much more. So please, that is one thing which has to be remembered. Now, if the female is well educated and is emotionally mature, can handle this and has her own social network, she'll be able to not only ensure a better marriage for herself, better circumstances, even the children will find a better household in which they can grow up to be responsible and more productive. Now, in countries where there is very scarce population, or the fertility rate is very low, there are countries where 18 or 19 or 20 years is the prescribed marriage for the female, whereas for the men it is 22. Gender equality, yes, but advanced countries that has happened. But those are the countries where population is very less. In countries like India, where the population pressure is high, fertility rate is about 2.1%. It is obvious when you raise the age, what you do is you minimize or reduce or optimize the fertility period, the childbearing age of the mother. So that is another factor which has to be kept in mind. Now, the question that you raised, linking it up again and building on what I've just said, please remember that in a country like India, if the woman is highly educated and skilled, she rubs shoulder to shoulder and her productivity is at the highest. The glass ceiling or the glass walls that we generally see happen because the women are probably not as well educated or not as well trained or skilled, that they, or at least the mindset is not there that the women can shoulder the same responsibility as the men is. In the economics profession, we are lucky, of course, many women have not got the Nobel Prize. Last year, of course, with Banerjee, we had the Flo get the Nobel Prize. Madame Curie had the Nobel Prize. But in economics profession, as you know, the IMF was headed by a woman, Madame Lagarde, and even today it is headed by a woman. We have the finance minister who's a woman. So in the economics finance area, we have been little happy that the women are shoulder to shoulder holding the responsibilities. But a highly educated woman can help the labor force in two ways. Firstly, she contributes. Secondly, she brings up the children in a way who are highly productive. As Gandhiji had said, if you educate a man, you only educate a man. But when you educate a woman, you educate the whole family. I think there's lots of value in what he said. And if the women are highly educated and skilled, the nation's productivity certainly goes up. So that is why the whole ecosystem improves when the woman is highly educated, and she has to be given time. If a man has to be 26 years before he does his PhD, why not a woman who is doing her PhD be 26? She has to be given her time because these days she shoulders dual responsibility. One, the responsibility of motherhood. The most of the burden falls on her shoulder. Secondly, the responsibility of being as productive as men. And that means she has to be as skilled or educated as the men. So she should be given enough time for that.
Absolutely. I think points well taken, and that's the direction that we need to head in. Talking about, the economy, talking about women's contribution as far as the workforce is concerned, Ruby Bharadwaj, from a social point of view, what are the benefits of women being financially independent?
It's really empowering. If a woman is financially independent, it gives her a lot of power in her own domestic domain, leave alone the fact that, she gets status outside her house. She is somebody who doesn't have to look up to her husband or her in-laws to get paltry sums of money. It improves her status in the family and outside the family, and it improves her sense of self-esteem. So I agree with Professor that yes, girls should be given opportunities, 100%. In fact, I just asked my own students who are women students, about 80 of them, and each one of them felt that yes, the age at marriage should go up, legal age, because otherwise there is pressure from the parents that you are 18 now and that it's time for you to stop your education and find yourself, we should find you a suitable match. So there is an indirect pressure from the family. But yes, the reason why I do not where I do not agree is the rationale behind what is being said, that it can improve the nutritional status or it can improve the IMR or MMR. Yes, marginally. But the real reason is the fact that it gives women a chance to prove themselves. Number two, but if you look at the large section of the rural women who are not able to get basic education, who are not able to get basic health facilities, just raising the age at marriage is not going to improve their plight in any way. That's my argument.
Sure, certainly. I think we've established the fact that we need to look at this issue holistically, and just increasing the marriageable age is not going to address the issue at large, but at least it's a start in the right direction and it's a step in that particular direction. All right, time to get closing comments from all my panelists now with the best way forward. Shankar Agarwal, starting first with you.
As everybody has said, and I would reiterate, that it is very necessary for any society to make sustainable progress to empower our women. And for that, two most important things are the quality of education and the skills. And for that, it is very necessary. They are not under any pressure of getting married at an early age. And since whatever we say, whatever may be our intention, but it will get implemented only when it has got a force of law. So under these circumstances, I think the government move is in the right direction. It's a welcome move. Thank you.
And since you've been in the ministry, Mr. Agarwal, I must ask you this question. So what is the optimal age really? Does anyone know that as far as marriage for a woman is concerned or motherhood is concerned?
I mean, it depends from the society to society and within the country like India, from region to region. But I would say that 20 years plus and minus maybe 6 months here and there should be good enough at the moment.
Absolutely. You'll have to look at it from the societal point of view as well. And since you're talking about pressure, Ruby Bharadwaj, let me come across to you before I go across to Charan Singh about, how important is it to have an attitudinal change as well when you look at this entire issue, how families need to change, society needs to change, and the ecosystem needs to change.
Absolutely. The ecosystem needs to change. We need to make sure, when we look at child marriage, it is a factor of poverty. It is a factor of lack of access to education for girls. And just when girls are steeped in poverty, families are steeped in poverty, when they do not have money to send their girls to school, that is when they consider them as a burden and just wanting to get rid of them, so as to say. So we need to bring about a change at the level of society, at the level of the mindset. Why should girls be considered as pariah dhan? Why can't they be people treated as assets by their own families, whether it is the natal home or the home where they have gotten married into? So there is a need to change the attitude both within and without, and look at the changes that we need to bring about at the societal level to eradicate poverty, to incentivize education, to incentivize employment for women.
Right. And Professor Charan Singh, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Yes, I would like to say that higher education and a little later age in life in marriage for a woman is empowering her. I haven't done any studies, but I can tell you from evidence that I normally see women who are highly educated, and when they get into marriage, the demand of dowry obviously doesn't arise or is minimal. So the pressure on the parents, you started from the burden of the girl child, that burden of the girl child story just vanishes if the child is highly educated. Secondly, given the fact that domestically in our country as well as globally, whatever be the scene, but domestically we have seen there's lots of domestic violence. If the woman is highly educated and skilled and trained, she can be confident of leaving the marriage and living alone. And that empowers her tremendously. And that is the reason I really like, and I wish there are more of it. We mostly have male-led movies. I want female-led movies, so that in a way there's a gender balance and the women in the country can feel that if need arises, they can run the show on their own, on their shoulders, and they are just not dependent on the males in the family, be it in the shape of a father, a brother, or a husband. So to empower that thing, it is important that women are mature when they enter the marriage, especially in the nuclear household, and they are highly educated and skilled. They can live their life on their own terms and they can afford their economic life on their own. Thank you.
Okay, on that note then, I'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective. For us, what's coming out of this discussion is that women are an important part of the workforce. Getting them married early stops many of them from entering the labor force and being financially independent. Just raising the age of marriage is not enough. We have to ensure that women are given the right kind of opportunities, the right kind of skill sets, and the right kind of education as well. Gender balance and parity is what we require. When a woman is educated and financially independent, the entire family and ecosystem benefits. And also, let's not forget that we need to increase the age of marriage of girls. There is no doubt about that. But we also have to ensure that we look at this issue holistically and ensure that the existing laws are well implemented and women are treated on par with boys and men. The entire society needs to change, the ecosystem needs to change, and we too need to play a big role and a big part if we need to see gender balance and gender parity in the times to come. With that, it's a wrap. See you again next time.